Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is episode 2 of my Dark Souls Scholar of the First Sin run for Return to Drangleic. My name is Sir Cowdog, and here we go. This is going to cover most everything in things betwixt and the tutorial areas leading up to uh, Majula. There are a bunch of pretty useful items to pick up along the way. Now, the reason why I start with the Swordsman class, even though it has the lowest hit points of all of the starting classes with only 4 vigor, um, it does start with a +1 short sword, which is probably one of the best starting weapons you can get. The mace that you get when starting with the cleric is also very, very strong. Although, unless you're going to do some sort of faith build, the cleric has a bunch of wasted stats, and honestly, you can buy a mace as soon as you unlock the blacksmith. So, first things first, I'm going to head up here to the troll, or the cyclops, or whatever you want to call him. And trolls are particularly weak to piercing attacks, and it just so happens that the swordsman's short sword, +1, is a piercing weapon on its R2 or strong attack. It's going to make short work of this guy. Really, all you need to do is just stay right behind him, and he will always do that weird sit-down attack. Just take a couple of steps back, it should be easy to avoid. Something you probably ought to practice quite a bit, since you will encounter quite a few of those guys throughout the game. So, next stop, a little bit of a secret here behind the waterfall. Down this path. And a smooth and silky stone. These get traded into the crows, which make an appearance in every Dark Souls game. And they are just up ahead in the tutorial area. Rest at the bonfire here. Grab these souls. Now, throughout the tutorial area, there are all of these unlit braziers, and if you light all of them, an NPC invader will spawn that, if you are able to kill it, will drop another petrified something, doubling the one that I already have. Now, unfortunately, right off the bat, it is not possible to do that, since in order to get the last couple of braziers lit, you need to access to an area that is locked behind a petrified, I don't know what to call it, hollow, petrified guy. Those guys are broken out of their petrification by an item called a fragrant branch of yore, and you get these all over the game. You'll see them throughout the various videos, but our first one is not going to be available until basically after the first boss. So, and to be perfectly honest, if you're a new player or you're just low level, defeating that NPC invader is going to be pretty tough. So I would definitely recommend waiting till you've got a few levels and some upgraded gear. Alright. As you can see, mostly I'm using the strong attack on the short sword. The stab is just really, really strong. The only real drawback of the short sword is that it has a very low durability. So, alright, here's the nest where the crows hang out, or the birds, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to drop this small and silky stone, see what I get. It is kind of a gambling mechanic. You don't really know what you're going to get. The crows are super happy that you bring them shiny objects. Oh, Titanite shard, that's not the worst thing to get, although I would have liked a twinkling Titanite item. Let's see what we get from the bigger one. Petrified something. The old whip. Not so good for this particular build. The old whip is very good for advanced players who know how to maximize the power of it. It's not really going to be within the scope of this build, though. So take a look online on the wiki if you want to know exactly what the old whip is. All I will say is that it is actually a fairly decent weapon if you have the stats to use it and are willing to kind of deal with the slightly janky mechanics of whips in Dark Souls 2. Alright, next up is a little bit of a jump across the gap. You have to be sprinting and then whatever button you have mapped to your controller. Sometimes it's the sprint button again, other times it is, like on my controller, depressing the left control stick. Use ladders as a secondary check on the face, since I'll also get different light and a different close-up. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, next up is a little bit of tutorial stuff telling you about plunge attacks. All I can really say is that plunge attacks in Dark Souls 2 are very unreliable. I actually don't recommend you ever try to use them, except in a very, very few specific locations. It's generally better just to land wherever it is you want to land and then do a normal attack. Plunge attacks, most of the time when you do them, will waste your stamina, do the attack, and you'll just miss. Even if you land right on top of a target, it's kind of a bad mechanic. But Dark Souls 3, very reliable. Dark Souls 1, very reliable. So, that statue down there is the one I mentioned earlier, and it will give you access to this area over here where you can see there are basilisks and archers and all sorts of nasty guys. So, but we can't reach there yet. Drop down here and head up the ramp, and that is all of things Betwixt that I can access at the moment. Next stop is Majula, which I will go ahead and include in this video. It's a fairly short one. Now, once you get to Majula, there are a bunch of NPCs, and I highly recommend you talk to all of them. I know a lot of people, especially veteran players, will immediately murder the merchant and steal his outfit. And the reason they do that is because each piece of that outfit gives you bonus souls from kills. Since this is kind of a new player tutorial, I'm not going to be doing that. Number one, most new players probably can't handle fighting the merchant. Number two, don't go murdering NPCs. It's kind of a bad habit to get into unless you know exactly what you're doing. You can screw up many, many storylines. You can cut yourself off from access to items later in the game. It's, as I said, usually a pretty bad practice unless you know exactly what you're doing. And here he is.
Hello there.
So, the way most merchants in Dark Souls 2 works, the more you talk to them and the more you buy from them, generally speaking, the more stuff that they're going to have. So, in this guy in particular, I believe it's after you've bought 6,000 or 8,000 souls worth of stuff, he will have a new inventory. And then after you've bought, I believe, 20,000 souls worth of stuff from him, he will once again have more stuff. There is a secret with this guy where if you have upgraded him, I believe, to his final level by buying 20,000 or so souls worth of stuff, and you approach him and talk to him with 0 souls, he will give you an armor set. Alright, so that helmet I just bought, number 1, has an awesome cool feather on it. I'm a fan of open face helmets, lets me see my character. But this particular helmet, when it's upgraded, actually does give pretty decent defensive values too. So you can buy it if you want. If not, it's up to you. It's mostly personal preference on my part. Alright, in here is the cat. Doing cat things.
Oh, undead are we? No. So, what did you want anyway? Ooh.
So the cat sells a number of rings, none of which I can afford right now. The only one of these I really recommend you buy is the Silver Cat Ring, since it reduces damage from falling. But this Ring of Whispers, eventually you will also want to get, since
Nothing
it
suited you, I
allows you
presume?
to unlock a couple of quests with various NPCs and get some additional items. Each time that's the case, it will be well explained in advance during that video. So, okay, next stop. And I know a lot of people on Reddit and a lot of new players make this mistake. This tablet here allows you to join the Covenant of Champions. And what is not explained is that when you join the Company of Champions, a couple of things happen. Number one, every enemy you encounter while in this covenant will have more hit points and do more damage. It's basically hard mode. Number two, you will not be able to summon help um, at all, as far as I understand, as long as you're in the covenant. I don't even think summon signs show up. But number three, the added benefit of it is that while you're in the covenant, enemies will not despawn ever. This is a mechanic that's unique to Dark Souls 2, where after you've killed an enemy, I believe it's 12 times, that enemy will no longer respawn. So keep that in mind if you want to farm. That's the covenant you want to join. And speaking of covenants, talking to this guy and exhausting his dialogue will allow you to join the
Do you know
Way of
much
Blue
even
covenant, and he actually gives you a ring,
and
especially as a new player and especially as the swordsman you want, since it increases
Do you
maximum hit points.
wait,
Also, if you happen to be playing online, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe that while you're wearing the ring,
that is a
it
wise
is
decision.
easier for blue
People
sentinels
are weak,
to
but the blue
come to your aid
sentinels
when you're
watch
invaded.
over. Let us
Personally, I think playing online is a mistake unless you really want to risk hackers, but if you really, really want that online experience of being invaded and engaging in jolly cooperation, then knock yourself out.
May you find
Alright, make sure you equip the ring, by the way. And finally, we have the Emerald Herald, who is your NPC you talk to level up and improve your Estus Flask.
Are you the next monarch? Or go.
She gives you the Estus Flask. Starts out with only one charge.
Is that a shard you found? Here, let me see it. To see light, however faint it might be.
But since we've already picked up one Estus Flask fragment from the well, now we have 2 charges of healing. Okay, so this build is primarily going to be a strength build, but as you can see as the swordsman, I started out with a fairly high dexterity, but all that really means is that I never have to spend any points leveling up dexterity. So, for the new players, a quick breakdown of stats. Vigor is your hit points and some defensive stats. Endurance is also apparently hit points, as you can see it's highlighted, but mostly it's stamina. That's your green bar, which lets you sprint and attack more. Vitality is equip load, which allows you to carry more stuff that you have equipped, such as armor, shields, and weapons. Attunement is for spellcasting. If this build is not going to be using any spellcasting at all, so you don't need to waste any points on it. But for either your miracle builds or sorcerer builds, this is a very, very important stat. You want to have as much attunement as possible, since it will give you more spell points. I'm sorry, not more spell points, more casts of each spell, but also more slots to equip more spells. Attunement also increases the agility stat, which I'll go over in just a little bit. Strength is pretty self-explanatory. Makes you do more damage with strength-based weapons. Very, very important for power stancing. Dexterity, again, pretty self-explanatory. Increases the damage of dexterity-based weapons. Increases some very, very slight defensive stats. Adaptability I'll come back to in just a moment. Intelligence is again for spellcasting builds, but does increase, as you can see, magic-based defenses And then faith, of course, is your miracle casting stat. Again, increasing some defense abilities. Now, adaptability is pretty important in Dark Souls 2 because what it does is increase your status effect resistance, poison, bleed, petrify, etc. What it mainly does is increase agility. Now, boosts ease of evasion and other actions. It's pretty vague. What it does is increase your iframes on your dodge roll. It also increases how fast you drink your Estus flask. Very, very important stat. Generally speaking, you want an agility of about at least 100, which usually means an adaptability score of between 20 to 25. I usually level it up fairly early, but I will leave it up to you. Some people don't mind having a slower roll, as they're more used to Dark Souls 2 combat, but for newer players, better to err on the side of caution and get more adaptability rather than less. So, get my healing stuff equipped. Now, since this is like a deathless run, I always have Homeward Bones equipped. That's my get out of jail free card. That's my fair escape. Anytime I feel like I'm in over my head, I'm going to run to where I think I have enough time, and I'm going to activate that to return to the bonfire. It's just kind of a insurance or a safety measure. But that's going to be it for the first video, guys. Next up is going to be the Forest of Fallen Giants. That area is very large, so I'm going to break that up into probably 3 or 4 videos. But until then, as usual, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.